is it? Where are we going?
It is time we hit the road again. We are going to finish the drive to the western end of the Crowsnest Highway, which is at Hope. In part one, we drove from the Crowsnest Pass here at the Alberta border as far west as Greenwood in the Boundary region. Now, in part two, we will continue on through these communities in the Boundary and the Similkameen until we get to Hope at the end of the highway. This is Greenwood, the real big smelter smokestack you can see in the distance. This whole Boundary region is loaded with stories of early mining, mainly of the big three: gold, silver, and copper. There was more mined out of this area than in all of the Yukon. Greenwood was the mining center at one time, with the famous Phoenix mine, a big smelter, and other mills and mines in the area. At one time, it had 2,000 people, 2 newspapers, 2 banks, a 1,000-seat opera house, and a thriving red light district. However, after World War I, the price of copper dropped, and Greenwood, like other communities in this area, went into decline. If you are in town, stop by the little park along the highway that commemorates the Japanese families who were interned here during World War II. You can look at my bike videos on the Slocan area, where I talked more about this shameful chapter in Canadian history. Here's a few more pictures of those interned here at Greenwood. The old hockey rink, once active, has now been torn down, and it's just a little park and picnic area along the bike trail in town. You can see this historic church from the highway, and this is a long-term RV park in Greenwood, and this is the highway as it goes through town. Certainly worth a stop and a visit to some of the old buildings, and you can get a nice snack to eat, and it's just a nice historic community along the highway. We're on the road again to the west, Midway, Rock Creek, and Osoyoos. The country's a little drier and small ranching, as you see cattle along the highway. The valley is fairly narrow here, and we follow right along the river for a ways. As I said, Highway 3 is a nice 2-lane paved road. The cedar trees are to the west of us now, and we're into pine tree country. Well, here we are at a place called Midway. It's midway between two places that nobody seems really sure where they're at. Maybe it's midway between somewhere and nowhere. But there's a lot of Kettle Valley Railroad and Trans-Canada Trail bicycling in this area. This is mile 0 of the Kettle Valley Railway Trail, one of the earliest sections of the Trans-Canada Trail, and a very popular place for bicyclers like me to come to. Here's a sign along one of the trails, and this was a unique RV sewer dump. And the valley is quite wide here and flat, as you can see, and it's quite dry as well. But it's a nice, quiet, open space. There's a plaque on the historic Kettle Valley Railway, and we are in Rock Creek, the next town. And this is the Kettle River here. Dry country, but nice, open country. We're headed now further west to Osoyoos. And we're above Osoyoos. That's the lake down below us. And up on the hill there, they have a new subdivision with a lot of architectural bronze statues. And this is the road as we head down toward the lake. Again, a nice road, curved road, an interesting road to drive. Here is a bird's eye view of Osoyoos and the lake. And the highway winds down toward the town. It is common to see RVs on the highway, and you're looking at Canada's warmest lake at Osoyoos. And it's a great tourist spot. There's a First Nations big winery and interpretive center for Canada's only desert. You'll want to visit it. And you drop elevation, of course, into the lake area. Here we're going by some orchard trees just coming into bloom, because on this trip it was early spring when we were there. We're on the main street of town. There's a kids' theme park in town, and it is a tourist-oriented place. We were there last summer, and you'll see that it's very green. We're sitting up at the First Nations Interpretive Center and Winery. A great place to have a visit and a drink of wine. There's a spit of land that goes 3/4 of the way across the lake, and it's a provincial park. And we've stayed in it several times. A nice area
right
for just picnics or for camping. And it's really quite a unique place and a very popular place as well. I'll just scan a little more with the camera so you can see a bit more. Once we leave Osoyoos, we are headed for Coston and the Caramos Hedley in the Similkameen district. West of Osoyoos, you start to see evidence of orchard and wine grape growing country. And you see these small fields in the valley on both sides of the highway. We are approaching the town of Coston and the bigger community of Caramos. And this is grape and wine producing country. More hay pastures are being converted to orchard trees. There are ongoing negotiations with the local First Nations people to establish a national park between here and the U.S. border to the south, thus creating protection for the unique landscape and vegetation in this area. Orchard work has occurred for a lot of years, as evidenced by these old tractors lined up along the highway at Caramos. Look at the various signs as we drive through town. We are indeed in orchard country. Some crops are organic certified. There is both wine and fruit production, and examples are ambrosia and Honeycrisp apples, nectarines, peaches, and plums. If you're through this way in the summertime, you can only imagine how great and enjoyable it would be to stop and shop along these highway fruit stands in this area. This is the fall when we drove through here, and you can tell it is not the best time of year. This is really a great place in the summertime, and I've driven through it several times over different summers. There is some evidence that early Spanish explorers in the 15th century followed the Columbia River upstream and came through the Caramos country. Evidence shows that they may have gone as far north as the Kelowna area. Pictographs show, perhaps, indigenous people chained by these Spaniards. Talk today remains of the large mysterious mound of Spanish armor, helmets, swords, and copper wristbands buried by the indigenous people after they revolted and killed their Spanish captors. Old-timers recall seeing this mysterious secret mound, but now it is probably plowed over and remains under hay pastures or orchard trees in the Carameus area. It is all part of the mystery and history of the Crowsnest Highway. Looks like we're coming into the next town. There it is on the right, the blue sign. This is the old mining town of Hedley. Almost a kilometer above the town, on a 40-degree angle, you can see the old mascot mine up there on Nickel Plate Mountain. They called the building up there the Cliffhangers. Steep stairs, platforms, and catwalks connected the buildings. This was hard rock mining for gold, silver, and copper, and occurred in about 127 kilometers of tunnels buried or burrowed into the mine, and the men worked for a wage of less than $5 a day. The mine was a dangerous workplace with cave-ins and moving equipment like these mini motors and belts and pulleys, and all in cramped working areas. They called this drill the Widowmaker because the men breathed in the deadly fine dust that caused silicosis, or more commonly known as miner's lung. The drill was called the Stoper because it carved out holes in spaces called stopes where the ore was located. These tunnels and depressions was where water dripped and formed small lakes in the mine tunnels and depressions, adding to the unpleasant and unsafe workplaces and conditions in the mine. For a while, they offered tourists rides up the mountain to see the old mine buildings clinging to the cliffs. Here are 2 tourists going up. However, this is now all shut down, basically for safety reasons. I don't want to leave you with the idea that life was all dreary and dull in these booming small mining towns. There was really a lot of visiting and laughing, and there were sports like hockey and golf very active in Hedley in the heyday of the mine. Today, it is a quiet community, but a place where interest to get away from the expense and hecticness of larger communities appears to be on the rise. We left Hedley a while ago, and we're headed for Princeton, and we're following the river. Some trailers look like they're semi-permanent along the river in this area. We are coming into Princeton now, and so we pulled off the road and drove through the town to see what it was like. It's a nice community and a very nice visitor center here. There's a better look at the big nice moose statue. Princeton is part of the Kettle Valley Rail Trail, which is a segment of the Trans-Canada Trail. So if you are a bicycler and want a level, pleasant place to ride, this is your kind of country. The elevation rises quickly out of Princeton, and I hope we can get at least a glimpse of the big, huge copper mine they have developed here. It is Canada's 3rd largest open-pit copper mine. I still hope we can get a glimpse of the mine here somewhere. The mine was a great boost to communities like Princeton. Let's just see, it's on the south side of the highway. It looks like some cleared areas up there. That looks like a building. We're getting close to the mine. We have a clear look at the whole mine area now, so I'll just scan it. They call it copper, but they still call it the gold mine in the sky. And the mine lives by the motto, the more we look, the more we find. A fleet of big haul trucks bring the ore to the processor, where steel balls break up the ore, and then flotation cells separate the copper out. Where does the copper go? To Japan, mainly the Mitsubishi Corporation. They make things from the copper, then sell it back to us. It is the Canadian way, and we cannot seem to break that pattern. All right, here we are at Hope, the western end of the Crowsnest Highway. It is also the southern end of the Coquihalla Highway that most truck drivers take to connect with the Trans-Canada Highway and points eastward like Calgary, Ontario, and other cross-Canada destinations. The town has a rich history as gold seekers in historic times passed through this area on their way to the gold fields north upstream on the Fraser River. That's the town hall here in Hope, and Hope has held a project in chainsaw carving, and you can see various statues in the central part of the town. If you want to see a similar project, you can look at my video on Northern British Columbia section in my website. You can click onto the Yellowhead Highway video, and you can see a similar creative chainsaw statues when I visited Chetwynd in northern BC. These chainsaw statues really add to the character of a community. For years, a major tourist attraction were the Othello railway tunnels. In recent years, however, raging floodwaters have ripped through these picturesque tunnels, and viewing of them has been curtailed. Mountains here at the turn of the Fraser River are big and steep. If you go a few kilometers east on the Crowsnest Highway, you can see the giant rock avalanche that roared down the mountain in 1965. There is a viewpoint near the old highway that was partly covered by huge rocks. Just before the slide, the road was blocked and people waited, including a Greyhound bus. Finally, everyone except 4 people got tired of waiting, so they turned around and went back to Hope. The 4 who waited patiently for the road to open were killed. 2 bodies were never found. So, really, the Crowsnest Highway has had 2 giant rock slides. This one here and the Frank Slide in Alberta. And that Frank Slide in Alberta wiped out the entire coal mining community of Frank in early times. But this slide was bigger. However, it killed fewer people. So there you have it, a 2-part travelogue series on the Crowsnest Highway. It's a great highway. You'll enjoy it if you take it. And if you enjoyed the programs here, hit the subscribe button. If you subscribe, that means that you'll be notified when we bring more videos onto the internet. And we're doing some more because we haven't finished traveling yet. So this is I Go Travel with Don Barnett. So long for now.